They assumed we feared the dark, just like so many other creatures across the galaxy did. For the Avarox, darkness was a tactical advantage, a realm in which their evolved vision and stealth techniques rendered them practically invincible. And for the longest time, they believed this was true of all species they'd conquered, that none could truly compete in the silent blackness where they reigned supreme. It was a belief they had relied upon when they invaded Earth. After all, the human race was diurnal, or so the Avarox intelligence reports had insisted. They would be caught off guard, vulnerable once the lights were gone, cowering in fear at the slightest sound or shadow. Yet that assumption would cost them everything. Midnight hung over the scorched tree-line like a shroud, broken only by the faint glow of distant stars piercing clouds of smoke. Captain Helena Rivera stood behind the twisted remains of a cargo container, scanning the darkness with a pair of night vision goggles perched on her forehead. She didn't need them right now. She'd grown used to the gloom. Her breath curled in the cold air, and her face was streaked with grime. She touched her wrist comm, confirming the silence on all tactical channels. A slight crackle, then nothing. Good. They needed quiet. Her team was in position. Around her, shapes moved in near silence. They were her people, men and women covered head to toe in dark camouflage paint that blurred their outlines. Some wore thermal goggles. Others simply trusted their honed night vision. Nearly all had some form of handmade or improvised equipment. The mission's briefing had been simple enough. Keep the power grid down to ensure pitch-black conditions. Let the alien squad come in. Then strike. Hard. No mercy. Because these invaders had come to Earth to hunt, so Earth would become their hunting ground instead. She glanced at Private Jackson, the newest member of her Special Operations Unit. He clutched his rifle with white-knuckled tension, blinking sweat from his eyes. He was young, maybe 19, and only recently thrown into the savage reality of Earth's war with the Avarox. 1 month ago, he'd considered all aliens to be ambiguous threats in the distance. Now he watched as those same aliens carved up entire outposts overnight. It hadn't taken him long to learn that if you didn't fight back with the same brutality, you wouldn't survive. "Captain," Jackson whispered, voice tight with nerves. "Are you sure they'll come this way?" She allowed herself a faint smile that he couldn't see in the darkness. "They always do. It's how they operate. Slip behind the lines, disable comms, sabotage from the inside. They think we're helpless in the dark." Jackson let out a shaky breath. "They really have no idea." Rivera nodded, scanning the horizon again. The forest was silent, except for the slow rustle of leaves in a faint breeze. No chirping insects, no animals scurrying. It was as if nature sensed what was coming and wanted no part of it. "We've done this dance 3 times already," she said. "We know their pattern." Further off, perched in the branches of a tall pine, Sergeant Dawson adjusted his vantage. He was an older soldier, mid-40s, who had an unsettling fascination with souvenirs. More than once, Helena had told him to tone it down. This wasn't a slaughterhouse, it was a battlefield. But to Dawson, the distinction seemed minor at best. He took personal pride in being the darkest shadow lurking in the night. Like a sniper, he rarely used the standard rifle, preferring instead to rely on knives, wires, and cunning. Stealth was his art, cruelty his brush. His voice crackled softly in Rivera's earpiece. "I've got movement near that old supply shed. Looks like 4, maybe 5. Avarox. They're skirting along the fence perimeter." She settled down slowly onto one knee, rifle at the ready, and raised her binoculars. She could make out faint silhouettes. One glowed a soft purple in her night vision scope, a reflection of the bioluminescent blood the Avarox had running through their veins. She recognized their sleek exoskeleton plating, the elongated limbs built for swift, silent movement. Their eyes gleamed in the dim starlight. The aliens thought they were invisible, but to her unit, who had trained for weeks to fight under these conditions, those silhouettes were practically dancing in a spotlight. "Hold fire," she said quietly. "Let them think we're all asleep." They waited. The seconds trickled by with an almost tangible weight. Finally, the first Avarox soldier stepped closer to the scattered debris of an abandoned checkpoint. 2 more followed. Still no sign of detection from the rest of the alien squad. The only noise was the soft click of alien jaw plates, communicating in quiet signals as they moved. Their language was made up of guttural hisses, subtle gestures, and the occasional flash of color across their scaled throats. Private Jackson tensed. He'd witnessed the Avarok's capabilities once before. They were like living nightmares, lethal, methodical, and used to being unstoppable in the darkness. They favored small squads with specialized infiltration gear. Humans might be able to outnumber them in open daylight, but the Avaroks specialized in night attacks, expecting minimal resistance. That was the standard logic. But everything changed once the lights went off on Earth. "Steady," Rivera reminded him. "Wait for them to come in range." The first sign that the Avaroks sensed something amiss came when the leading soldier, a tall figure with ridged exoskeletal shoulders, raised a clawed hand. Its vertical pupils dilated, scanning the area. It twisted its neck in a slow, predatory arc. Then it hissed softly, the universal sign of caution. The rest paused, shifting formation. They were expecting motion sensors or tripwires. They were not expecting the primal readiness of a species that had learned to wage war for centuries in the worst conditions imaginable. Dawson's voice whispered through the calm. "Captain, your call. Rivera Exaliv. Take the shot." One suppressed rifle shot cracked the silence. The leading Avarox's head snapped back as a bullet punched through its eye. Purple fluid spurted, flickering under the faint starlight. It collapsed without a sound, even as the others turned in alarm. That was all the invitation the humans needed. Like a pack of wolves, they struck from every corner. Shots rang out. Some found their targets instantly, slicing through alien exoskeleton. Others sent the Avaroks diving behind whatever cover they could find. But they weren't fast enough. Human soldiers emerged from the shadows, brandishing close combat weapons. The aliens tried to regroup, but in their confusion, they never realized how outnumbered they were. 10 humans advanced, each with night vision capabilities or simply relying on the skill of moving unseen, guided by sense and training. The darkness was their ally, not their enemy. Helena Rivera kept her breathing steady, firing short, controlled bursts. 3 rounds, a pause, then 2 more. She watched an Avarox jerk violently and collapse, a hole torn in its throat. A shrill hiss of alarm echoed among the squad as they realized they were under heavy attack. One alien retreated behind the ruined checkpoint wall, fumbling for a neural device strapped to its forearm. Trying to call for reinforcements, no doubt. It never got the chance. Dawson dropped from his tree perch, landing behind it in near silence. His wire garrote snaked around the alien's neck, twisting tight. There was a snapping of cartilage, a gargled hiss, and then the limp body slid to the ground. Dawson knelt there, grin flashing in the darkness, one hand pressed against the side of his prey's neck. In a single, swift motion, he drove a short blade into the base of its skull, severing the neural junction. Purple blood oozed over his gloves. He almost chuckled. Within moments, the ambush ended. 4 dead Avaroks lay scattered amid broken rubble. One was still alive, pinned under a collapsed segment of razor wire. It struggled, hissing and spitting. Jackson, breathing hard, stepped forward, aiming his rifle at the creature's head. Hesitation flashed in his eyes. "Pull the trigger, Private," Rivera said softly, coming up behind him. "But it's trapped, Captain. That doesn't make it harmless." As if to prove her point, the alien hissed again, trying to raise a weapon hidden beneath its twisted limb. Jackson squeezed the trigger, and the shot echoed for a brief second before the forest resumed its hushed stillness. Purple blood seeped into the ground. Jackson swallowed hard. Dawson walked over, shaking his head in feigned disappointment. "Tricky little thing. I was thinking about collecting a sample from that one." Rivera ignored him. She looked at the bodies, scanning for rank insignia or anything of strategic importance. "Anyone see the commanding officer in this group? There's usually at least one with a higher rank." No one responded. If the commander wasn't here, it meant this was just a vanguard. The main force would be lurking somewhere deeper in the woods. They had to keep going. "Form up," she ordered, eyes flicking to Jackson, who stood trembling slightly. Stay focused, she told him, her voice not unkind. We've got a long night ahead. They moved into the forest, silent as specters, leaving behind the bodies and the stench of spilled alien blood. Commander Eshin of the Avarox Dominion was certain that by sunrise, this entire human outpost would be in flames. He walked with lethal grace at the center of his squad, all of them stepping carefully to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. Thick canopy overhead shrouded them in near-total darkness. It should have been a comfortable environment for his kind. They had specialized eyes for it, an exoskeleton that made minimal noise and centuries of tradition that said the night belonged to them. He paused, sensing something off. The air was still, but there was a heaviness to it that he couldn't define. He sniffed. His species could detect pheromone trails and sense fear on chemical levels. Humans, though, smelled strangely neutral. At best, he caught only faint traces of sweat and metal. Unsatisfying. Behind him trailed 9 soldiers, each an elite in infiltration. 2 of them, Ravek and Zal, carried compact disruptor rifles that nullified electronics. Normally that made it easy to overwhelm a settlement by killing the power and comms. But tonight, they discovered the power was already out. No lights, no signals, as if the humans themselves had chosen the blackout. If that was an intentional strategy, it was unsettling. Eshin found his dorsal plates twitching in annoyance. They passed through the gnarled trunks of ancient trees, stepping carefully over roots. Eshin's hearing caught no hint of human presence. No boots, no gun barrels scraping on brush. It should have eased his nerves, but it only deepened his suspicion. He recalled the message from a survivor earlier. They're not blind in the dark, Commander. They move like wraiths. That was nonsense. Humans were known to fumble in low light. They needed advanced technology or bright flashes to see. Then again, the rumors said these particular humans had specialized units that thrived after sundown. Eshin had assumed it was exaggeration. He made a subtle motion with his hand. His squad fanned out, scanning the surrounding gloom with wide, vertical pupils. Nothing, just the quiet hush of leaves. Pressing forward, they navigated deeper, occasionally passing battered structures or half-collapsed barricades. It looked like the remains of older skirmishes, rusted scraps, shell casings. The faint odor of dried blood, human blood, likely, lingered in the air. They reached what looked like an abandoned building. Small, with wooden walls scorched and partially caved in. Eshin held up a fist, signaling his team to halt. He listened closely. The wind whispered through cracks in the building, but no footsteps, no hum of electronics. He gestured to Ravek, who crept up to the side door, disruptor at the ready. Ravek tested the handle, found it unlocked, then slowly pushed it open. A wave of stale air drifted out, carrying a hint of mildew. Eshin followed, stepping inside with caution. The interior was dark, but to his eyes, it was a mosaic of grays and outlines. Broken furniture, rotting crates, a corridor leading to other rooms. Zal took up position on the opposite side, covering him. Still no sign of life. The quiet was oppressive. Eshin flicked his tongue across his teeth. Something felt too easy. The humans had to be somewhere. In the corridor's gloom, a faint scuffle of movement. All of them froze, weapons raised. Silence. Then a creaking sound from above, like an attic floorboard shifting under weight. Eshin looked up, seeing only the rafters. He signaled 2 soldiers to investigate. They advanced, steps near silent, scanning every corner. At that moment, the light outside flickered, some ephemeral glow from a distant flare. Maybe Eshin glimpsed movement overhead, a shape clinging to a rafter, crouched like a spider. The shape had a face covered in black and green paint, teeth bared in a grin. Human. The soldier dropped in one fluid motion, landing atop the rearmost Avarox soldier. There was a wet crunch as both collided with the floor, followed by a single, abrupt scream cut short. The rest of Eshin's squad spun, but the human was already gone, dissolving back into the shadows, leaving behind a crumpled alien form on the floor. Chaos erupted. The squad fanned out, scanning wildly. The building's corridors suddenly came alive with movement. Dark shapes flickered across doorways, knives flashed, and the hiss of alien blood meeting the floor filled the space. Shin fired a burst from his rifle, but he hit nothing but splinters. His heart hammered. These humans weren't stumbling around in the dark. They were orchestrating the entire attack. They moved like phantoms. Another soldier fell, body pinned to the wall by a steel blade driven with terrifying force. Purple blood ran down in thick rivulets. A human voice, female, whispered a mocking greeting. "Welcome to our little hideout." Then the voice was gone. Ravek managed to get off a shot from the disruptor, illuminating the corridor in bright pulses. In that strobe-like glare, they saw two humans pressed against the walls, faces smeared in camouflage. One had a pistol raised, the other clutched a curved blade. Then darkness again, a scuffling, a gurgling hiss. The next flash revealed Ravek lying on the floor, a gaping hole in his neck, while one of the humans stood over him, face spattered with purple liquid. Shin roared, stepping back from the corridor, firing blindly. In that moment of confusion, he discovered the building's exit behind him was now blocked by a collapsed beam. Or maybe it had been pulled down intentionally. He had no idea how many humans were in here, but their lethal precision was unlike anything he'd encountered. He activated his neural link, whispering urgent commands to call for backup. All he got was static. The humans must have jammed their communications or destroyed their repeater. His own advanced infiltration gear was worthless if the enemy had anticipated it. He had 4 soldiers left, each pressed against the walls, searching frantically for a target. The sound of footsteps approached from the corridor, slow and unhurried. Shin raised his rifle. For a heartbeat, he saw a figure, a man with a shaved head, black paint across his jaw, stepping forward with startling confidence. He wore some sort of night vision goggles perched on his forehead, but didn't appear to be using them. This human locked eyes with Shin, smiled as though greeting an old friend. Then he moved in a blur. Shin fired. The figure rolled under the shot, coming up with a short, serrated blade that carved upward into an Avarok soldier's abdomen. That soldier howled, staggering back as his exoskeleton split, intestines spilling onto the floor. The figure used the momentum to pivot behind the next soldier, hooking an arm around its throat, snapping it with a violent jerk. Purple blood sprayed in an arc. Shin backed away, breath ragged, primal terror clawing at him. This was all wrong. The humans were supposed to run from the dark. That was how it had always been in the Dominion's expansions. Yet here they were, turning the night into their playground. The slow, methodical brutality on display felt monstrous. Shin caught a glimpse of a female soldier prying open an alien's chest plating, extracting a chunk of pulsing tissue. She actually took a bite, gagging a bit, laughing about how it tasted. Madness. He found an open door leading into an adjacent room and dove inside, slamming it shut behind him. If he could just get out of the building, maybe find some vantage point. He turned, scanning for an exit. Light flickered in from outside, some small gap in the wall. Movement behind him. Spinning around, he saw a figure rise from behind a toppled cabinet. The muzzle of a shotgun glinted dully. The shot thundered, unleashing a hail of pellets that shattered Shin's left shoulder and part of his chest plating. He staggered, choking on blood, black spots dancing in his vision. The figure stepped forward, a woman with short-cropped hair, face marred by green stripes that angled across her cheeks. She pressed the barrel to Shin's temple. Outside, the last of his squad were dying in muffled shrieks. He thought desperately of his homeworld, his command, everything that led him here. "We only came for," he began. But the woman pulled the trigger again, the blast punching him off his feet. Pain exploded through his skull. The last thing he registered was the cold, unyielding floor slamming against his exoskeleton. Darkness swam in with finality. Dawn was still far off when Captain Rivera and her team regrouped outside the building, counting bodies and rummaging for salvage. She wiped blood from her blade, letting out a long breath. They'd lost nobody, not even a minor injury. Meanwhile, 8 more Avaroks lay dead. Possibly their commander was among them. The operation was another clean success. The rest of the planet needed to know that these would-be conquerors weren't unstoppable nightmares. Earth had faced nightmares before, sometimes from its own kind. Dawson crouched beside a fallen alien, meticulously sawing away a section of exoskeleton with a small electric tool. Private Jackson swallowed hard. Does that serve a tactical purpose, or? Dawson shrugged, his grin half hidden in the gloom. Maybe. R&D likes intact plates. They pay a bonus for decent samples. Helps develop better bullet penetration or something. He flipped the carved chunk over, examining the purple-streaked interior. These guys sure do bleed a lot, don't they? Jackson turned away, fighting the nausea. Across the clearing, Sergeant Smitty was kneeling over another Avarox, extracting small, glowing implants from behind its ear. Got the neural interface, she called, holding it up. Davidson, you owe me a case of beer. Private Jackson stepped past the carnage, trying to maintain composure. He didn't like the gore, the casual banter, but he understood the big picture. The Avaroks had invaded. They'd done horrific things to other colonies, capturing or butchering innocents in the night. Now, the humans had turned that advantage around. Rivera caught him looking uneasy and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You did well, she said. I know it's hard at first, but remember, they'd do worse to us if we let them. He nodded, forcing the lump in his throat down. Understood, Captain. She straightened. We have to keep moving. There'll be another squad out there, if not more. Rivera gave the silent signal for the team to form up. Again, and they faded back into the treeline, leaving the building and its grim harvest behind. Not far from there, a battered Avarok soldier named Zira clung to life in a shallow ditch. Her left leg was twisted, the exoskeleton snapped by a human's bullet. Blood trickled from a gash in her abdomen. She had remained perfectly still after she fell, feigning death. Her squad mates were gone, their hisses and shrieks silenced. She'd never heard such quiet in the aftermath of an attack. On other worlds, the nights would ring with the cries of the conquered. But these humans killed quickly, then joked about it. Zira gritted her teeth, pressing a trembling hand to the wound in her side. She needed to reach the Dominion. They had to learn what monstrous cunning these humans possessed. Slowly, inch by agonizing inch, she crawled out of the ditch. Every muscle screamed in protest. A broken exoskeleton shard dug into her flesh, making her hiss with each drag. She glanced around, wary. The forest looked deceptively tranquil, the moonlight filtering through the canopy. No immediate sign of the human soldiers. They had moved on. She breathed shallowly, cursing in her own language. She'd come to Earth expecting easy prey. The Dominion had told them humans were physically weak, relying on light. That had proven disastrously false. A twig snapped to her left. She froze. Was it a human returning to finish the job? Her hearts thundered. The shape that emerged was unbelievably small by Avarok standards. A child. A human juvenile, maybe no more than a dozen years old. She wore a simple shirt, pants smeared with mud, and clutched an old-fashioned slug-thrower rifle in her hands. Zira felt a surge of disbelief. A mere child stood there, calmly regarding her with wide eyes. You're one of them, right? The child asked in a bright, curious tone. The aliens that Dad and the others have been fighting? Zira tried to muster a response in halting English. I do not mean harm. A lie, of course, but she was desperate. I only want to leave. No fight. The child took a step closer, lifting the rifle, though it wavered in her small hands. Mom says you came to our planet to kill us. Zira's mouth was dry. She tasted blood. We needed resources. The child's expression hardened. I heard you kill families. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. More like anger. Is that true? Zira remembered the Dominion's orders. Subdue the local populations by any means. It often meant terrorizing them, capturing them, ransacking their settlements. I follow orders, she managed. The child let out a sad little sigh. Then she squared her shoulders in a strange mimic of an adult stance, pressed the rifle stock to her shoulder, and pulled the trigger. The muzzle flash lit the darkness. The shot tore through Zira's chest. She felt her exoskeleton and flesh rupture, her heart's faltering in a bloom of agony. She toppled, trying to speak, but only blood gurgled from her mouth. The child advanced, peering down at her with an almost clinical fascination. Zira's vision blurred, the edges darkening. The Dominion had missed something fundamental about humankind. The darkness did not make them helpless. It gave them cover, a place where their primal instincts rose unchecked, where they fought like cornered animals. No, not animals. Apex predators. Predators who had refined hunting over millennia of conflict with one another. The child nudged Zira's side with a sneaker. "Mom said your blood helps our garden grow," she murmured, wrinkling her nose at the smell. Then she stepped back and fired another shot, ensuring the alien wouldn't survive. Zira's final realization was that the humans were not novices to cruelty. They had been practicing it upon each other for centuries, and now the entire galaxy would learn it the hard way. By the time the sun began to rise, Helena Rivera's special operations team had moved through half a mile of dense forest, clearing out pockets of Avarok's infiltration squads. They left a trail of gutted bodies and severed limbs. Birds circled overhead, drawn by the scent of alien corpses. The human soldiers conversed in low, calm voices, as though this were a routine chore. They used the hush of the forest like a curtain behind which they could vanish whenever an Avarok scout drew near. They came to a small clearing that served as a designated rally point. The morning sky glowed with pale, orange light. One by one, they dropped to a crouch in the undergrowth, checking each other's status. The cost of the night's work: no human casualties. A handful of bruises, minor lacerations. Nothing that would prevent them from continuing the fight. The bodies of at least 30 Avaroks, on the other hand, littered the region. Sergeant Smitty flicked off her infrared scope, rubbing tired eyes. "That's the last wave we've seen all night, Captain. Think they're pulling back." Rivera considered this. Possibly. Or they might be regrouping. She scanned the tree line, as though she could sense more out there. "We should assume they'll come again. Maybe in larger numbers, or with heavier equipment." Dawson dropped a blood-slick piece of exoskeleton into a pouch at his belt. "I hope they do. My bag's only half full." Private Jackson stifled a grimace. His own uniform was stained with purple streaks where an Avarok soldier had bled out in his arms. He swallowed, reminding himself that if they showed mercy, the aliens certainly wouldn't. The Dominion had enslaved or exterminated countless worlds. Earth had no choice but to fight back with every ounce of savagery it had, and humanity had discovered it possessed plenty. "Captain," Jackson asked, "are they really unstoppable across so many other planets?" Rivera nodded slowly, resting her rifle on her shoulder. "So the reports say. They rely on infiltration at night, on fear and confusion. Many species can't function once the sun sets. That's what the Dominion capitalized on." "Until us," Jackson muttered. A grim smile tugged at her lips. "Yes, until us." She stood, scanning the trees. "All right, gather your gear. We'll do a final sweep of the perimeter. If the main invasion force is out there, we need to be ready." They moved out as the sunrise touched the highest branches. The emerging daylight cast long shadows through the forest, revealing dried pools of purple. The suffocating tension of the previous hours lifted slightly. Some of them even hummed quietly or exchanged dark humor about their night's work. Miles away, in a fortified underground bunker, the largest contingent of Avarok's troops gathered around holographic displays that flickered with static. The Dominion had believed victory was certain after their infiltration squads sabotaged the region's power. But the scout reports and the few scrambled transmissions from survivors painted a horrifying picture. Dozens of elite Avarok's commandos were simply gone, torn apart by humans who seemed at home in the darkness. A ranking officer named Alash paced the bunker, his tail lashing in agitation. "What do you mean they can see in the dark? That contradicts everything we know about human physiology." Commander Eshin's last transmission indicated heavy losses, answered an aide. He said the humans used advanced camouflage and had no trouble navigating without lights. They jammed our comm channels, masked their scent. The aide trailed off, noticing Alash's face contorting in frustration. Ow! Alash snapped. Our infiltration squads have never failed like this. He flicked a claw across the console, rewinding fragmentary helmet cam footage. Most of it was black, flashes of muzzle fire, screams, then static. In one snippet, an alien soldier was pinned to the ground by a human who bit into his chest. Alash clenched his jaw plates, disgust churning in him. Humans ate them? Was it real, or just a twisted intimidation tactic? They're unhinged, he muttered, or they've adapted to fear so effectively they've become something worse. He slammed a fist onto the console, considering the next step. Maybe a daytime assault was the answer. Humans might be strong in the dark, but the Dominion still had superior numbers and advanced weaponry. Let them see how unstoppable a full frontal assault could be, sunlight or not. Alash gave the order to mobilize the main force. If humans wanted to fight at night, then the Dominion would fight them under the sun in full might. Captain Helena Rivera stood at the edge of a ruined settlement building, the early morning light illuminating the carnage from the night before. Broken windows, bullet-riddled walls, and smeared trails of purple glistened on the ground. She smelled the acrid tang of scorched metal and blood. Nodding to herself, she pressed the transmit button on her portable comm. The Dominion's jamming signals had been disabled with the destruction of their field equipment, so she had a clear channel back to the main Earth forces. Command, this is Captain Rivera, Special Ops. Region is secured for now. We have reason to believe a larger enemy force is planning a push soon, possibly a daytime assault. Over. A crackle, then a voice. Copy that, Captain. Air support is available if needed. Our satellites pick up movement of alien forces to the north. Prepare for heavy contact. Over. Rivera allowed herself a small smile. Acknowledged. We'll be ready. Over and out. She turned to her unit, many of whom were sprawled on chunks of rubble, catching their breath or reloading. Each man and woman bore the look of experienced predators who just finished a successful hunt. Even Jackson, who had begun the evening uncertain, now had a hardened glint in his eyes. Dawson spat out a strip of dried rations. Think they'll come in droves, Captain? She picked up her rifle from the ground, slinging it over her shoulder. I bet on it, and we'll show them how we play in broad daylight. 2. A chuckle rippled through the group. They might have specialized in night combat, but that didn't mean they were helpless in the sun. Historically, humans had proven dangerous in any environment, day or night, from arid deserts to frozen wastelands. An unstoppable knack for survival and a grim imagination for warfare were hallmarks of the species. Let the Avarox come. Let them see what a cornered and furious planet could do. The day was bright, clear skies overhead as the Avarox main force advanced in tight formation. Armored transports hovered across broken roads, while squads of infantry moved on foot. They carried energy rifles and drones, scanning for human positions. The remains of sabotage power lines and comm towers dotted the landscape, telling them humans still didn't have full infrastructure. That gave them some advantage, or so they believed. Alash rode in one of the transports, bristling with suppressed anger at the humiliations of the previous night. He spotted a battered sign that read, "Welcome to Red Pines." The settlement was quiet, no sign of civilians. The place must have been evacuated. All the better, fewer hostages to worry about, and the Dominion could unleash its full might. They'd reduce every building to rubble if need be. The transport columns reached a wide intersection. Olosh signaled the halt. Drones up, he barked. We flushed them out, then crushed them. He had no intention of letting the humans slip away in broad daylight. Small hovering machines lifted into the sky, scanning thermal signatures. The displays fed back real-time images to the command console. One drone circled overhead, capturing a vantage of half-collapsed rooftops. Another soared down a side street. Then, in a flicker of static, the feed cut out. What happened? Alash demanded, leaning over the console. Get it back. En êtes fonticalitiped comment? It's offline, possibly shot down or jammed. Alash cursed. Keep the others at higher altitude. Moving on foot, careful. They might have learned how to scramble our signals. He slid open the transport side door, scanning the intersection. The sun was high now, leaving minimal shadows for the humans to hide in. Yet the streets seemed too empty. Even though he expected an ambush, the absolute stillness gave him chills. He gestured, and a squad of armed Avarox troops fanned out, weapons raised. A cluster of buildings loomed ahead, their windows broken, walls scarred by previous battles. Alash stepped down from the transport, feeling the heat of the day on his scales. The soldier next to him tightened their grip on a disruptor rifle. Without warning, shots rang out from multiple angles. Bullets peppered the ground around Alash's group, kicking up dust. One soldier took a round to the head, collapsing in a spurt of purple. Another doubled over as bullets pounded his chest plating. Shouts erupted, and the soldiers scrambled for cover behind rubble and vehicles. From the rooftops, human snipers fired with methodical precision, picking off Avarox troopers. Others rained grenades down from second-story windows. A thunderous explosion rocked the intersection, flinging two aliens aside like rag dolls. Alash dove behind the transport, seething at how swiftly the humans had turned the daylight to their advantage as well. This was supposed to be the Dominion's unstoppable push. He commanded the squads to return fire, saturating the buildings with disruptor beams. Smoke billowed as walls crumbled, but the humans had long since moved. They were experts at striking, then repositioning. He glimpsed dark shapes flitting from one rooftop to another. They still wore face paint or rebreathers, but now they used the bright environment as just another stage for ambush. A savage glee wafted in the air, overshadowing any notion that the humans might have been at a disadvantage. Up the street, Captain Rivera ordered her riflemen to shift positions. Keep them pinned. They'll try to push with heavy weapons soon. She signaled to Smitty, who tossed a smoke grenade from the upper window. The thick cloud obscured the Dominion's line of sight. Hidden behind the swirling smoke, a half-dozen human soldiers rushed forward, lobbing improvised explosives at the hovering transports. One of them exploded in a shower of metal fragments and alien screams. Alash coughed through the haze, stumbling back. This was chaos. So many illusions shattered. He recalled the old intelligence. Humans rely on technology for their day vision, excel at direct confrontation in the sunlight. That was true, but it failed to capture their ferocity, the planning, the sheer bloodlust. He'd hoped Nightfall had been their only monstrous side. He was wrong. A sudden punch of a bullet tore into his thigh, sending him sprawling. He hissed, pressing a hand to the wound. Another soldier tried to drag him to cover. All around him Avarox bodies, were strewn in awkward poses. Some clutched severed limbs. Others stared blankly at the sky. Exoskeletons cracked open to reveal glistening organs. The grid of Earth's soil was soaked with purple. From behind a collapsed car, a human rose, eyes glittering behind a visor. He fired a burst that downed two more aliens. Alash aimed his pistol, but the human ducked easily. Then he was gone, melting into the swirling debris. This wasn't a scramble. It was a calculated slaughter. Retreat. Alash screamed into his comlink. We have to regroup. Pockets of Dominion troops broke rank, trying to scramble back to their transports. Some managed to lift off, only to be targeted by rockets or heavy guns that the humans had placed strategically throughout the settlement. It was a merciless kill zone. By the time the remainder of the Avarox force managed to limp away from Red Pines, they had lost the majority of their vehicles and hundreds of soldiers. Bodies and broken hardware littered the streets, and the air stank of ozone, smoke, and blood. Helena Rivera stood on the remnants of a second-story balcony, watching the retreating alien transports vanish into the distance. She could still hear sporadic gunfire as her team mopped up stragglers. She lifted her radio. All units report. Looks like they're pulling out. One by one, squads checked in. Minimal casualties on the human side. Jackson's voice came through, He'd taken a graze to the shoulder, but he was alive. Dawson bragged about how many kills he'd racked up. Smitty laughed triumphantly, listing the severed parts she planned to bring back for research. Rivera allowed herself a breath of relief. It was a victory for now. She climbed down into the street, ignoring the thick smoke clinging to the air. Broken concrete crunched beneath her boots. Nearby, a wounded Avarox lay pinned under metal debris, eyes filled with hatred. Rivera stepped past it, offering no mercy. She'd seen what they did to innocents. She wouldn't lose sleep over leaving them for the crows. Another soldier put a bullet in its skull when it tried to hiss for help. Dawson approached her, snapping a mock salute. "Hell of a show, Captain. Day or night, they bleed the same." Rivera gave him a long, even look. Sometimes she worried about how much he enjoyed the carnage. But as long as he directed his savagery at the right target, she'd let him be. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "They'll regroup. Maybe call for reinforcements from orbit. Let them." Dawson tapped a fresh trophy strapped to his belt, a length of alien plating he'd carved from an officer's chest. "We'll keep killing them. I don't care what planet they're from. This is our turf." She couldn't argue with that. Earth had been terrorized enough. These invaders had awakened something primal in humanity, the raw determination to fight with tooth and nail, bullet and blade, technology and cunning. If the Dominion insisted on continuing this war, they would find Earth a veritable nightmare, far worse than any other species had been. By late afternoon, the settlement was theirs again. Scattered squads of humans moved through the rubble, gathering intel, searching for survivors, or retrieving salvageable tech from downed transports. War had become as routine as a day's labor. You spent your hours fighting, then you cleaned up the aftermath. And if you happened to gather a few souvenirs from the corpses, well, that was just part of life on the new Earth. In one corner of the wreckage, Private Jackson crouched to inspect a piece of Dominion equipment that looked like a jamming device. Its outer casing was smashed. Purple fluid stained the metal where an alien had tried to shield it with his own body. Jackson exhaled slowly, remembering how that creature had convulsed when Jackson shot him. He didn't feel guilt about it, not anymore. Survival demanded a hardened conscience. Sergeant Smitty strolled over, pulling off her gloves. "Not a bad day for a rookie, Jackson." He managed a half smile. "I guess I'm not the rookie I was." She patted his shoulder. "No, you're not. This is how you learn in a war like this, fast and brutal." He brushed off some dust, then stood, gazing around at the gutted buildings. "I wonder how many more attacks before they realize we're not going down easily. Or if they'll just keep throwing troops at us." Smitty shrugged. "Doesn't matter. We'll keep killing them." She offered him a canteen of water, which he accepted gratefully. Night fell again, but it found the battered remains of the Avarox main force holed up miles away, licking their wounds in a makeshift encampment. Torches flickered. Some soldiers used portable devices to keep watch, though they were all too aware the darkness might hide more humans. The morale was dangerously low. The idea that humans might fear the dark now seemed laughable. They were the darkness's favorite children, it appeared, twisting every advantage the Avarox once prided themselves on. Back at Red Pines, Captain Rivera's squad readied themselves for another infiltration. Their mission: track the retreating alien columns and sabotage them before sunrise. They moved like shadows, guided by minimal light. The few that used night vision goggles had them flipped up most of the time. In truth, they no longer needed them. They learned to hunt by sound, by smell, by instincts honed over thousands of skirmishes. Rivers of alien blood had further sharpened that sense. Helena Rivera led the way, unafraid of the forest's murk. The ground glistened faintly where the day's sunlight had dried out the mud. She recalled times before the invasion when Earth nights were peaceful. Families would sleep safely in their homes. Times had changed. Now the nights belonged to squads like hers, people who had become intimately familiar with the kill or be killed reality. The quiet was once a comfort. Now it was a promise that somewhere in the gloom, more of the enemy would die. Private Jackson was right behind her, scanning the way ahead. He no longer trembled or hesitated. If he spotted any sign of motion, he'd bring his rifle up, That was the new normal. Behind them, Smitty, Dawson, and a few others fanned out in a wide formation, listening for any uninvited guests. They assumed we feared the dark, Rivera said quietly to Jackson, recalling the message she'd heard repeated over and over by alien captives or transmissions. Until we hunted in it. He nodded. We taught them better, Captain. She gave a mirthless chuckle. Yes, we did. Then, silently and efficiently, her squad vanished deeper into the black trees, ready for another night of slaughter. The darkness was no threat to them now. It was an old friend, a familiar ally. And across the vast distances of space, the Dominion would soon learn, if any of them lived long enough to report back, that on Earth, the shadows were safe for humans and lethal for everyone else. Far from the front lines, a single battered Dominion craft finally managed to break orbit, carrying a handful of wounded survivors who'd escaped the surface. They included a trembling minor officer who had seen firsthand the atrocities inflicted by the humans in the dark. He prepared a desperate message to the Dominion High Command. His hands shook as he typed, recalling the shredded bodies of his comrades, the laughter of the humans as they dissected living aliens. He didn't bother to sugarcoat it. Let the truth be known. We assumed humans were diurnal prey and would panic once we cut their lights. We had no idea they have hunted in darkness for millennia, hunted each other, even. We had no idea they relished the terror they inflicted. Send reinforcements if you must, but do not expect an easy conquest. Earth belongs to predators far more ruthless than we ever imagined. He sent the transmission, uncertain if anyone would read it in time. He closed his eyes, memories of purple blood and grim, human faces swirling in his mind. Yes, humans use technology to see in the dark, but that was only the beginning. Beneath the surface, they had an innate ability to adapt, to innovate, to turn fear into an even sharper weapon. And they delighted in it. The officer shuddered. He could only hope the Dominion would heed his words. But deep in his heart, he suspected it was too late. The humans' primal ferocity had been awakened, and they would stop at nothing to defend their home. Darkness was no refuge for the Avarox. The sun offered no respite. Everywhere they turned, humanity struck with savage precision. The stories told about Earth would haunt the Dominion for years, if any survived to tell them. Because in the end, it wasn't the humans who feared the dark. It was every other creature in the galaxy that would soon learn to fear them, day or night, as unstoppable masters of the hunt.